Welcome to TechNova Podcast.
All right, imagine this. Okay, imagine if like your 3D printer, you know the one you use to make all those cool models and stuff, and that Cricut machine that you use for like personalizing all your things, and even like a Glowforge for laser engraving, and even that iDraw tablet for digital art. What if they all just kind of became one machine?
It'd be pretty wild, wouldn't it? Like some kind of ultimate maker's dream machine.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually what we're digging into today, the Bambu H2D.
Yes, the H2D. Bambu Lab's latest creation. It's been causing a lot of buzz.
It really has. So for this deep dive, we're using a really interesting article from The Verge, published just a few days ago, March 25th, 2025. And for everyone listening, today's goal is to, really understand what this H2D is all about, what it can actually do, and whether it's something you should be paying attention to, especially if you're into like, the latest tech and gadgets, but don't want to wade through a bunch of technical jargon. Basically, a clear and concise look at this potentially game-changing device. So first things first, what's the fundamental idea behind this H2D? What makes it so special?
Well, at its core, it's actually a pretty clever concept. Picture the movement system you find in a 3D printer. Specifically, the article mentions a Core XY system, which is known for being fast and precise. And now imagine making that system adaptable so you can easily swap out different tools. That's essentially what the H2D is all about.
So it's not just about the movement system itself, but more about the versatility of what you can attach to it.
Right. The article makes a great analogy. It's like a KitchenAid mixer.
Oh, I like that analogy.
You've got the main motor unit, and then you can attach like a whisk or a dough hook or a pasta roller, depending on what you're making.
Yeah, I totally get it. So the H2D takes that same idea and applies it to digital fabrication, essentially.
Exactly. Instead of just extruding plastic like a typical 3D printer, you can also use it for cutting, drawing, and even laser engraving.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Okay, so let's focus on the 3D printing capabilities for a bit. The Bambu Lab already has a pretty solid reputation in the 3D printing world, right? So what's new with the H2D? Is it just a bigger printer, or is there more to it?
Well, size is definitely one of the improvements. It's got a much larger build volume than their previous models like the X1 and P1 series. We're talking 350 by 320 by 325 millimeters.
That's pretty huge.
Yeah, it's significant. It means you can print much bigger objects in one go.
No more printing things in multiple pieces and then trying to glue them together, huh?
Exactly. That can be a real pain.
Totally. So what else have they improved on the 3D printing side of things?
One of the really interesting features is the dual nozzle system.
Dual nozzle, what's that all about?
It means you can actually print with two different materials at the same time, so you don't have to keep swapping filaments manually.
Oh, that sounds super convenient.
It is, and it cuts down on wasted filament too, which is always a good thing.
Absolutely. The article actually mentioned a really cool example of this, right? The bicycle helmet.
Oh, yeah. Bambu's talking about printing an entire bike helmet with both a strong outer shell made from like carbon fiber-laced PTG, and then a soft inner padding made from TPU, all in one go.
So it's printing both the hard and soft parts at the same time.
Yep, simultaneously. Pretty impressive, right? Although the article does mention some issues with the quality of that particular print, something we can come back to later.
Right. We'll definitely dig into that. But the potential is definitely there. What about the nozzles themselves? Any upgrades there?
Yeah, so the nozzles are still easy to swap out without any tools, which is a big plus, but the new ones can handle higher temperatures up to 350 degrees Celsius.
So you can print with a wider range of materials now.
Exactly. And there are optional high-flow nozzles available if you need to print faster. One thing to note is that the article mentions that only one of the nozzles is designed to work with TPU filament reliably.
Good to know. Now, one thing that always bugs me with 3D printing is dealing with filaments that absorb moisture from the air. They get all brittle and cause jams. Have they addressed that at all with the H2D?
Yeah, they've made some big improvements in that area. The H2D has what they call an automatic material system, or AMS for short.
AMS, okay. What does it do?
Think of it like a smart filament holder. It's enclosed, and it actually has built-in heaters to keep the filament dry. There are two versions, the AMS2 Pro and the AMS HT. The Pro heats up to 65 degrees Celsius, and the HT goes even higher, to 85 degrees. And they even have electromagnetically controlled vents to help with the drying process.
So like a little climate-controlled chamber for your filament.
Exactly.
That's really smart. It's a huge pain when your filament gets ruined because of humidity.
Yeah, totally.
So besides the AMS, are there any other refinements they've made to the overall printing process?
Well, the printer itself has built-in vents that help regulate the temperature and prevent warping, especially when you're working with like those flexible filaments. It also has its own chamber heater that can go up to 65 degrees Celsius to keep things nice and toasty inside. And the article also mentions a redesigned dual wiper system to keep those nozzles clean, and a new tubing system for the filament that's supposed to be easier to connect and more reliable.
Okay, so they've really thought about a lot of those little annoyances that can pop up with 3D printing and tried to address them.
It seems that way. They're really trying to streamline the whole experience.
I can definitely appreciate that. But, the thing that's really making headlines is the whole multi-tool aspect of this machine, right? It's not just a 3D printer.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how it handles cutting, drawing, and etching.
Yeah, this is where that whole modular attachment system comes into play. You can basically swap out the 3D printing nozzles for other tools, like a laser cutter, an engraver, a pen plotter for drawing, and even a module for cutting vinyl and paper.
Okay, so you're not limited to just plastic anymore. Let's start with the laser. What are the laser options and how powerful are they?
They offer configurations with either a 10-watt laser or a 40-watt laser.
So that 40-watt laser must be pretty powerful, huh?
It is. The wattage basically determines how quickly and cleanly it can cut and engrave.
And the author of the article actually got to try out the laser, right? What did they make with it?
Yeah, they did. They used the 10-watt laser to carve a Pokemon stencil out of wood, which, shows the kind of personalized things you can create with it.
That's pretty cool.
They also used it to make a custom drink coaster out of cork. They took one of their daughter's drawings and etched it onto the cork, and then the machine also cut out the shape of the coaster all in one go.
So it can both engrave and cut without having to switch tools.
Exactly. It saves a lot of time and hassle.
That's a really neat feature. Did they try the laser with any other materials?
Yeah, they tried engraving some Apple AirTags.
AirTags, those little tracking devices.
Yeah, those. It's interesting because they actually ended up burning the plastic casing of one of the AirTags while they were trying to find the right settings.
Oh, no.
It just highlights how important it is to, experiment and do some test runs before you commit to engraving something important.
Definitely a good reminder to always test on scrap material first. Okay, so what about those other functions, the vinyl cutting and the drawing? How do those work?
For those, they have this thing called a cutting module.
Okay, a cutting module.
It uses magnets to attach different blades for cutting things like vinyl and paper. It also has these little holders for pens of various sizes, so you can use it for plotting and drawing too.
Ah, I see. So you could, like, design a sticker on your computer and then have the H2D cut it out of vinyl, or you could make a digital drawing and have it drawn on paper with a pen. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty versatile. And the article points out that the laser cutting and engraving are generally much faster than 3D printing. Like we're talking seconds or minutes instead of hours or even days.
Oh, wow. That's a big difference. Okay, so we've got this amazing machine that can do all these things, but how do you actually tell it what to do? What's the software like?
Bambu Lab has created a new desktop app called Bambu Suite that's specifically designed to control those non-3D printing functions. The author mentions that it's still a bit basic, but it has all the essentials like pre-designed shapes, text, lines, QR codes, and you can even import images. And they're planning to add the ability to load designs from the Bambu community in the future.
So more features are on the way. That's good to hear. What's the general process for using these features?
Well, you start by adjusting things like the speed, the laser power, or the blade pressure, depending on what you're working with. Then there's this really cool feature where the printer takes a picture of your material, and you can actually see your design overlaid on that photo within the software.
Oh, that's clever. So you can make sure everything's lined up perfectly before you start cutting or engraving.
Exactly. It helps avoid mistakes and wasted material.
That's awesome. The article also talks about how Bambu Lab is known for making things user-friendly. Does the H2D follow that trend?
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. It's got a built-in touchscreen and a ton of cameras and sensors. Like, it's got LiDAR for automatic bed leveling, time-lapse cameras, a dedicated nozzle camera, and even a bird's eye view camera.
Wow, it sounds like they threw every bell and whistle in there.
They really did. And all of this is combined with their software algorithms to make the whole experience as intuitive as possible, even for beginners.
Okay, so that's all great, but the article does mention that it wasn't all smooth sailing, right? There were some hiccups along the way.
Yeah, there were definitely some things to consider. The author actually had to get a replacement printer during their testing. And importantly, they found that the basic 3D printing modes weren't as reliable as other printers they'd used, even some cheaper ones.
That's a little concerning, especially since Bambu Lab is known for making pretty reliable printers.
Yeah, it's something to keep in mind. And that dual nozzle feature, the one that lets you print with two materials at the same time, well, it wasn't working reliably for the author either.
So that whole bike helmet example, where they were printing the hard shell and the soft padding at the same time, it didn't quite work out.
Not perfectly, no. The author ended up with a helmet that had some flaws in both the shell and the padding, so it wasn't really usable.
Oh, that's a shame. It's a great concept, but it sounds like the execution needs a little work. What about the laser? Were there any downsides there?
Well, the author did express some concerns about using a laser inside a 3D printer. Even with a fume extractor, there was still a pretty strong smell of burnt material lingering in the air. And for safety reasons, you can't start a laser operation remotely. You have to physically press a button on the machine, and they recommend staying close by the entire time the laser is running.
Yeah, that makes sense from a safety standpoint, but it could be a bit inconvenient for some users.
Definitely.
So taking all of this into account, the features, the price, the potential issues, where does the H2D fit in the market? Who's it really for?
Well, the base price is $1,899, but they also have several combo packages. Some are available for pre-order and some you can buy right now. They have a combo with a 10-watt laser, one with the AMS2 Pro, and then the top-of-the-line package, which they call the Laser Full Combo. That one has the 40-watt laser, the cutting module, and some other laser accessories, and it goes for $3,499. The article makes it clear that Bambu Lab is really trying to go after that prosumer hobbyist market.
Hmm.
People who are serious about their crafts and hobbies but aren't necessarily professionals. They're basically positioning the H2D as an alternative to buying separate machines like a Cricut, a Glowforge, or even a digital drawing tablet.
So they're trying to be the one-stop shop for makers and creators.
Exactly.
Okay, so to sum it all up, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
The Bambu H2D is a really ambitious machine. It combines 3D printing, laser cutting, and engraving, and pen plotting all in one. It's got a bigger build volume for 3D prints, a dual extruder system, a much better material handling system, and the software is designed to be user-friendly. However, based on the article, it seems like there might be some growing pains, especially when it comes to the reliability of some of the core functions.
So it's like the Swiss Army knife of maker tools, but maybe it needs a little sharpening before it's truly ready for prime time.
Yeah, something like that. It definitely has a ton of potential, but those interested in the H2D might want to, wait and see how things develop. Check out some reviews from other users, see if they iron out those initial kinks with software updates and things like that.
That's good advice. It brings us to our final thought for today. As we see more and more of these all-in-one devices popping up, not just for making things, but for all sorts of tasks, how do you think this trend will affect the way we work and create? Will we all end up with fewer, more versatile tools instead of having a dedicated device for every single task? It's something to think about. And that's it for our deep dive into the Bambu H2D. Thanks for listening.